The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in September of 1876, and Olivia Henderson knew before she even opened it that her life was about to change forever, though she could not have predicted just how much. She stood in the cramped boarding house room she shared with two other women in St. Louis, Missouri, staring at the envelope that bore her name in careful, masculine handwriting. The advertisement she had answered 3 weeks prior had been simple enough. A rancher in Wyoming territory seeking a wife must be of good character and willing to work hard. No family ties preferred. That last line had caught her attention more than anything else, because at 22 years old, Olivia had no family ties whatsoever. The orphanage where she had grown up closed its doors when she turned 18, and she had been scraping by ever since, working as a seamstress in a factory where the hours were long and the pay barely enough to keep her fed. The other girls at the boarding house talked endlessly about their families back home, their mothers and fathers and siblings, but Olivia had nothing to contribute to those conversations. She had learned early in life that she was unwanted, a burden passed from one reluctant caretaker to another, and she had built walls around her heart to protect herself from further rejection. The letter inside was brief. Nathan Xavier, owner of the Double X Ranch near Fort Bridger in Wyoming territory, would be pleased to marry her if she was still amenable to the arrangement. He had enclosed train fare and would meet her at the station on October 1st. That gave her exactly 2 weeks to pack up her meager belongings and make the journey west. Olivia read the letter 3 times, searching for any warmth in the words, but found none. It was a business arrangement, nothing more. She told herself that was fine. She had never expected love or affection from anyone, and she would not start expecting it now. What mattered was security, a roof over her head, and perhaps the chance to build something resembling a life. The factory supervisor was not sorry to see her go. Seamstresses were easy to replace, and Olivia had made no close friends among the other workers. She was too quiet, too withdrawn, always keeping to herself. On the morning of September 28th, she boarded the train heading west with a single trunk containing all her worldly possessions. The journey took 3 days, and Olivia spent most of that time staring out the window at the changing landscape. The crowded cities gave way to farmland, then to vast open spaces that seemed to stretch on forever. She had never seen so much sky, so much emptiness. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. Fort Bridger was a small settlement that had grown up around an old trading post. The train station was little more than a wooden platform, and as Olivia stepped down with her trunk, she felt suddenly very small and very alone. The other passengers dispersed quickly, met by waiting friends or family, until she was the only one left standing on the platform. She was about to panic, wondering if Nathan Xavier had changed his mind when she heard boot steps approaching. Turning, she saw a man walking toward her with long, purposeful strides. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build that spoke of years of hard physical labor. His face was weathered and tanned from the sun, with strong features and eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore work clothes, sturdy denim trousers and a cotton shirt, a leather vest, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. "Miss Henderson." His voice was deep and rough, as if he did not use it often. "Yes." Olivia squared her shoulders, trying to appear more confident than she felt. "Mr. Xavier," he nodded once, his gaze sweeping over her in a quick, assessing way that made her feel exposed. She knew what he was seeing. A plain woman of average height, too thin from years of inadequate meals, with mousy brown hair pulled back in a severe bun and gray eyes that had long ago stopped hoping for anything good. Her dress was the best she owned, but it was faded and had been mended multiple times. "The wagon is this way," Nathan said, reaching for her trunk. He lifted it as if it weighed nothing and started walking. Olivia hurried to follow him, her heart sinking. He had barely looked at her, had not offered any greeting beyond confirming her identity. This was going to be exactly what she had expected. A cold, practical arrangement between two strangers. The wagon was sturdy and functional, pulled by two strong horses. Nathan loaded her trunk in the back and then helped her up onto the seat with a brief touch of his hand on her arm. Even through the fabric of her sleeve, she could feel the warmth and strength of his grip. He climbed up beside her and took the reins, and they started out of town without another word. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Olivia stared straight ahead, unsure what to say. Should she make small talk? Try to learn something about the man she was about to marry? But he seemed in no mood for conversation, his jaw set in a hard line, his attention focused on the road ahead. The Double X Ranch was about an hour's ride from town. The land here was different from anything Olivia had ever seen. Rolling hills covered in prairie grass, with mountains rising in the distance. The sky was impossibly blue, dotted with white clouds that cast moving shadows across the landscape. There was a wildness to it, an untamed quality that both frightened and fascinated her. Finally, Nathan spoke. "The ranch is about 3,000 acres. I run cattle, about 500 head right now. Got 2 hired hands who help with the work. House is not fancy, but it is solid." "I see," Olivia said quietly. "What will my duties be? Cooking, cleaning, mending, garden if you are inclined, whatever needs doing." He paused, then added, "I am not expecting anything you are not willing to give." The meaning behind those words was clear, and Olivia felt her cheeks heat. The marriage bed. She had thought about it, of course, with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation, but she appreciated that he was not going to force her. "Thank you," she said. They rode in silence for another 20 minutes before the ranch came into view. The house was a sturdy log structure with a covered porch and a stone chimney. There was a large barn, a corral with several horses, and various outbuildings. It was more substantial than Olivia had expected, evidence of years of hard work and careful management. Nathan brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house and jumped down, then came around to help her. This time, his hand spanned her waist as he lifted her down, and Olivia was acutely aware of how strong he was, how easily he handled her weight. Their eyes met for just a moment, and she saw something flicker in his dark gaze before he looked away. "I will show you the house," he said, already moving toward the front door. The interior was as practical as the exterior. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace, a wooden table and chairs, and a cast iron stove. There were 2 doors leading off the main room. Nathan gestured to one. "That is my room. Yours is there." He indicated the other door. Olivia blinked in surprise. She had assumed they would share a room, given that they were to be married. But Nathan was already carrying her trunk to the smaller room, and when she followed him, she found a simple space with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the prairie. "Preacher is coming tomorrow afternoon," Nathan said, setting the trunk down. "We will have the ceremony here. My hands, Tom and Charlie, will stand as witnesses." "All right." Olivia clasped her hands together, trying to steady herself. Everything was happening so fast. Nathan stood there for a moment, looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. Then he said, "I will let you get settled. Supper is in an hour." He left, closing the door quietly behind him, and Olivia sank down onto the bed. Her hands were trembling. What had she gotten herself into? This man was a complete stranger, and tomorrow she would be his wife. She had thought she was prepared for this, had convinced herself that a loveless marriage was better than the alternative, but now she was not so sure. Still, there was no turning back now. She had no money for train fare, even if she wanted to return to St. Louis. And what would she be returning to? The same miserable existence, the same loneliness, the same certainty that she would always be alone. At least here, she had a chance at something different. Olivia unpacked her trunk, hanging her few dresses in the small wardrobe and arranging her personal items on the dresser. She had a small collection of books, her most prized possessions, and she placed them carefully on the windowsill. Then she washed her face and hands in the basin, changed into a fresh dress, and ventured out into the main room. Nathan was at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. He glanced up when she entered, his expression guarded. "I can do that," Olivia offered. "Cooking is part of my duties, is it not?" "I have been managing on my own for a while now," Nathan said. "But if you want to help, there is bread that needs slicing." They worked together in silence, an awkward dance of two people trying to share a space without getting too close. Olivia was acutely aware of him, of the way he moved with easy confidence, of the size of him in the small kitchen area. She was used to cramped quarters, to living in close proximity with others, but this felt different, more intimate. When the meal was ready, they sat down at the table. It was a simple stew, but it was hot and filling, better than anything Olivia had eaten in months. She ate slowly, trying not to seem too eager, but Nathan must have noticed because he said, "Eat as much as you want. There is plenty." "Thank you." She took another helping, suddenly ravenous. "You are too thin," Nathan said bluntly. "Have you been ill?" "No, just the wages at the factory did not leave much for food after rent." Something flickered across his face. Anger, perhaps, or sympathy. "You will not go hungry here." It was a simple statement, but something about the way he said it made Olivia's throat tight. She nodded, not trusting her voice. After supper, Nathan showed her around the property, pointing out where everything was. The barn housed the horses they used for working the cattle, along with various tools and equipment. The chicken coop provided fresh eggs. There was a root cellar for storing vegetables and preserved goods. Everything was well maintained and organized, evidence of a man who took pride in his work. "Tom and Charlie stay in the bunkhouse," Nathan explained, gesturing to a smaller building near the barn. "They are good men, but if they ever make you uncomfortable, you tell me. I will." They walked back to the house as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air was cooling quickly, and Olivia wrapped her arms around herself, shivering slightly. "It gets cold here at night," Nathan said. "Even in early fall, you will need warmer clothes. I can make some, if you have fabric. We will go into town next week. You can get what you need." Inside, Nathan lit the lamps while Olivia washed the supper dishes. It was all so domestic, so ordinary, and yet so strange. Tomorrow she would marry this man, and this would be her life. Forever. When the dishes were done, Olivia found herself standing awkwardly in the middle of the room, unsure what to do next. Nathan was sitting at the table, going over what looked like account books, his brow furrowed in concentration. He had taken off his hat, and she could see that his dark hair was slightly too long, curling at the nape of his neck. "I think I will retire," Olivia said finally. "It has been a long day." Nathan looked up, and again she saw that strange expression in his eyes. "Sleep well, Miss Henderson." "Olivia," she said. "You can call me Olivia. Olivia." The way he said her name, low and careful, sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "I am Nathan." She nodded and retreated to her room, closing the door and leaning against it. Her heart was pounding, though she could not have said why. Nathan had been nothing but courteous, even kind in his gruff way. And yet there was something about him that unsettled her, something that made her very aware that she was a woman and he was a man. Olivia changed into her nightgown and climbed into bed, but sleep was a long time coming. She lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through the grass, the creak of the house settling. And somewhere on the other side of that wall, Nathan was sleeping. Or perhaps he was lying awake too, wondering what he had gotten himself into. The next morning, Olivia woke early, disoriented for a moment before she remembered where she was. Pale sunlight filtered through the window, and she could hear movement in the main room. Quickly, she dressed and pinned up her hair, then ventured out to find Nathan already dressed and preparing to leave. "I have morning chores," he said. "Help yourself to breakfast. Preacher should be here around 2 o'clock. He was gone before she could respond, the door closing firmly behind him. Olivia stood there for a moment, then set about making breakfast. She found eggs and bacon, bread and butter and coffee. By the time Nathan returned an hour later, she had everything ready. He paused in the doorway, taking in the set table, the smell of hot food. "You did not have to do all this." "You hired me to cook, did you not?" Olivia said, trying to keep her tone light. Nathan's expression softened slightly. "I suppose I did." They ate together, and this time the silence was less awkward. Nathan asked her a few questions about her journey west, and Olivia answered honestly, omitting only the worst details of her life in St. Louis. No need to burden him with all of that. "You have any family?" Nathan asked suddenly. "No, I grew up in an orphanage." "You?" "My parents died when I was 16. I had a younger sister, but she passed from fever 2 years ago." His voice was flat, emotionless, but Olivia could see the pain in his eyes. "I am sorry," she said softly. Nathan shrugged. "It is life. People die." But Olivia understood now why he had written that advertisement. He was alone, just like her. Two solitary people trying to build something together because they had no one else. The morning passed slowly. Olivia cleaned the house, which barely needed it, and then sat on the porch with one of her books, trying to distract herself from her nervousness about the upcoming ceremony. Nathan was working somewhere on the property, and she caught glimpses of him occasionally, moving with easy purpose. At 1 o'clock, 2 men rode up to the house. They were both in their 30s, dusty and sun-weathered like Nathan, but with easier smiles. They dismounted and approached the porch, removing their hats. "You must be Miss Henderson," the taller one said. "I am Tom, and this is Charlie. We work for Nathan. Please call me Olivia." "Pretty name for a pretty lady," Charlie said with a grin. He was shorter and stockier than Tom, with a weathered face and kind blue eyes. Tom elbowed him. "Do not make her regret coming out here before she is even married." They were teasing, friendly, and Olivia found herself relaxing slightly. "It is nice to meet you both." Nathan emerged from the barn then, and the 3 men conferred for a moment before all of them headed to the bunkhouse to clean up. At 1:30, a buggy appeared on the horizon, growing larger as it approached. The preacher, Olivia assumed, and her stomach clenched with nervousness. Reverend Thomas was a middle-aged man with a kind face and gentle manner. He greeted Olivia warmly and spoke with Nathan for a few minutes before suggesting they proceed with the ceremony. It was so quick, so matter-of-fact, that Olivia barely had time to process what was happening. They stood in front of the fireplace, Tom and Charlie flanking them as witnesses. Reverend Thomas opened his Bible and began to read the traditional words. Olivia's hands were shaking, so she clasped them tightly together. She risked a glance at Nathan and found him staring straight ahead, his jaw tight. "Do you, Nathan Xavier, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward?" "I do." Nathan's voice was steady, certain. And do you, Olivia Henderson, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward?" Olivia's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I do." "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Nathan turned to her, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Then he leaned down, his hand cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness, and pressed a brief, chaste kiss to her lips. It was over in seconds, but Olivia felt the warmth of it all the way down to her toes. Tom and Charlie congratulated them both, and Reverend Thomas filled out the marriage certificate with a flourish. Just like that, it was done. Olivia was married. She was Olivia Xavier now, wife of a rancher in Wyoming territory. The Reverend stayed for coffee and cake that Tom had brought from town, making pleasant conversation about the weather and the cattle prices. Then he took his leave, wishing them well. Tom and Charlie excused themselves as well, heading back to the bunkhouse with knowing grins that made Olivia blush, and then she was alone with Nathan, her husband. They stood in the main room, an awkward silence stretching between them. Nathan cleared his throat. I have work to do." "Of course." Olivia felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. Nathan grabbed his hat and headed for the door, then paused. "Olivia." She looked up at him, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. There was something there, something intense and almost hungry, before he shuddered it away. "Welcome to the Double X Ranch," he said quietly. "I hope you will be happy here." Then he was gone, leaving Olivia standing alone in the house that was now her home. The days settled into a routine. Olivia rose early to make breakfast, packed Nathan a lunch, prepared supper, cleaned, mended, and tended a small garden that was still producing late summer vegetables. Nathan worked from dawn until dusk, coming in only for meals, always polite but distant. They were like two ghosts sharing a space, barely interacting. At night, Olivia lay in her narrow bed and listened to Nathan moving around in the next room. Sometimes she heard him pacing, and she wondered what kept him awake. Was he regretting this marriage? Did he find her as disappointing as she found herself? She had known she was plain, unremarkable, but she had hoped that perhaps she could at least be useful. And she was, she supposed. The house had never been cleaner, the meals were good and regular, his clothes were always mended. But Nathan never said much beyond "thank you" or "this is good." There was no warmth, no companionship, nothing that made her feel like she was anything more than hired help. 3 weeks after the wedding, Nathan announced they would go into town for supplies. The trip took an hour each way, and Olivia was grateful for the chance to see something beyond the ranch. Fort Bridger was small, just a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and a few other businesses. But to Olivia it felt almost cosmopolitan after weeks of isolation. Nathan tied up the wagon in front of the general store and helped her down. Inside, the proprietor, a Mrs. Miller, greeted them with enthusiasm. "Nathan, and this must be your new bride. Welcome, my dear, welcome." Olivia found herself enveloped in a warm hug that startled her so much she almost pulled away. Mrs. Miller was a plump, cheerful woman in her 50s, with gray hair and a kind smile. "Now, Nathan said you would be needing fabric and such. Come, let me show you what I have." For the next hour, Olivia was swept up in a whirlwind of activity. Mrs. Miller showed her bolts of fabric, suggested patterns, and shared gossip about the various residents of Fort Bridger. Nathan disappeared to order feed and other supplies, leaving Olivia to make her selections. She chose practical fabrics for everyday dresses, and a length of deep blue wool that Mrs. Miller insisted would bring out her eyes. There were also buttons, thread, needles, and various other notions. When she was done, The pile on the counter was substantial, and Olivia felt a twinge of guilt at the expense. Nathan returned just as Mrs. Miller was totaling everything up. He glanced at the pile, then at Olivia's worried face and said simply, "Is that everything you need?" "Yes, but it is quite a lot. I could put some back." "No need. You need clothes." He pulled out his wallet and paid without hesitation. As they loaded the wagon, a woman's voice called out, "Nathan Xavier, is that you?" Olivia turned to see a beautiful woman approaching. She was dressed in an expensive traveling suit, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her face lovely even with the slight hardness around her eyes. She looked at Nathan with a familiar intimacy that made something twist in Olivia's stomach. "Catherine." Nathan's voice was carefully neutral. "I heard you were back in town. Just for a short visit." Catherine's gaze swept over Olivia, dismissive and cold. "And who is this, my wife, Olivia?" "Olivia, this is Catherine Wells. Her father owns the bank." "How charming," Catherine said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I had no idea you had married, Nathan. How sudden?" "Not particularly." Nathan's hand settled on Olivia's lower back, a protective gesture that surprised her. "We should be going. Good to see you, Catherine." He guided Olivia to the wagon and helped her up, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they pulled away, Olivia could feel Catherine watching them, and she felt small and plain and utterly inadequate. They were halfway back to the ranch before Olivia found her voice. "She is very beautiful." Nathan's jaw tightened. "She is." Did you care for her?" There was a long silence. Then Nathan said, "I thought I did. Once. She made it clear that a rancher was not good enough for her. She married a banker from Cheyenne instead. He died last year, and now she is back, probably looking for another husband with money." The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable, and Olivia understood. Catherine had broken his heart. Was that why he had sent for a mail-order bride? Because he could not bear the thought of courting again, of opening himself up to that kind of rejection. "I am sorry," Olivia said quietly. Nathan glanced at her, his expression softening slightly. "You have nothing to be sorry for." But Olivia felt the weight of her inadequacy even more heavily now. She was not beautiful like Catherine. She would never be the kind of woman who could inspire that kind of passion in a man. She was just plain, practical Olivia, good for cooking and cleaning and nothing more. That night, she lay in bed and allowed herself to cry for the first time since arriving at the Double X. She cried for the loneliness of her childhood, for the years of feeling unwanted, for the hope she had not even realized she had been harboring that maybe, just maybe, this marriage could be something more than a business arrangement. But it was clear now that Nathan had married her out of necessity, not desire. His heart belonged to a beautiful woman who had rejected him, and Olivia was just a convenient substitute. She cried herself to sleep, muffling her sobs in her pillow so Nathan would not hear. The next morning, Olivia rose early as usual, her eyes red and puffy but her resolve firm. She would not allow herself to hope for more than what this marriage was. She would do her job, keep the house, cook the meals, and not expect anything else. But as she moved around the kitchen preparing breakfast, she became aware that Nathan had not yet emerged from his room. That was unusual. He was always up before dawn, already dressed and heading out to start his work. Olivia hesitated, then knocked softly on his door. "Nathan, breakfast is ready." There was no answer. Worried now, she opened the door slightly and peered in. Nathan was lying in bed, his face flushed, his breathing labored. "Nathan," Olivia rushed to his side, pressing her hand to his forehead. He was burning with fever, his eyes opened, glazed and unfocused. "Olivia, you are sick. Stay still, I will get water." She spent the day nursing him, bringing cool water to sponge his face and neck, forcing him to drink, changing the sweat-soaked sheets. Nathan drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes coherent, sometimes muttering things she could not understand. At one point, Tom and Charlie came to the house looking for Nathan, and Olivia explained the situation. Tom immediately rode for the doctor in Fort Bridger, while Charlie took over Nathan's chores. Dr. Harrison arrived in the late afternoon, a grizzled old man with capable hands and a no-nonsense manner. He examined Nathan thoroughly, then pronounced it a bad case of fever, likely from exhaustion and exposure. "He has been working himself too hard," the doctor said. "I have seen it before. Ranchers think they are invincible, push themselves until they collapse. Keep him cool, keep him hydrated, and do not let him get out of that bed for at least a week. If the fever does not break in the next day or two, send for me again." Olivia nodded, filing away every instruction. After the doctor left, she settled into a chair beside Nathan's bed, a bowl of cool water and a cloth at hand. She would not leave him. Through the night she kept vigil, sponging his heated skin, murmuring reassurances when he grew restless. At some point near dawn, his hand reached out and found hers, gripping it tightly. Olivia held on, her own eyes burning with exhaustion but refusing to let go. As the sun rose, Nathan's fever finally broke. His skin cooled and he slipped into a genuine, restful sleep. Olivia allowed herself to relax slightly, though she still did not leave his side. When Nathan woke several hours later, he was weak but lucid. He looked around the room, then at Olivia, taking in her exhausted face and the signs of her night-long vigil. "You stayed with me," he said, his voice hoarse. "Of course I did. You are my husband." Something flickered in his eyes. "I do not remember much, but I remember your voice. You kept talking to me, telling me to keep fighting." Olivia felt her cheeks heat. She had not realized he could hear her. In her exhaustion and fear, she had said things she would never normally say. That she needed him to get better, that she did not want to be alone again, that she cared about him. "You were very ill," she said, standing abruptly. "I should get you some broth. The doctor said you need to eat." "Olivia," Nathan's hand caught hers, stopping her. "Thank you." She met his gaze and saw genuine gratitude there and something else, something warm and wondering that made her heart skip. "You are welcome," she whispered. Over the next week, Olivia nursed Nathan back to health. She kept him in bed despite his protests, brought him meals, read to him from her books when he grew bored with being still. They talked more in those few days than they had in all the weeks since she had arrived. She learned about his childhood, about the parents he had loved and lost, about his sister who had been his best friend. He learned about her orphanage years, about the loneliness, and the sense of never quite belonging anywhere. They shared stories and laughter, and slowly, something began to shift between them. On the 8th day after he had fallen ill, Nathan declared he was getting out of bed whether Olivia approved or not. She fussed and worried, but he was steady on his feet, and by the next day he was back to light work, though Olivia and the ranch hands conspired to keep him from overdoing it. "You all treat me like I am made of glass," Nathan grumbled one evening over supper. "You nearly worked yourself to death," Olivia said firmly. "Someone has to make sure you do not do it again." Nathan looked at her, and there was that expression again, warm, almost tender. "You are a good wife, Olivia." The words should have made her happy, but instead they stung. A good wife. Useful, practical, efficient. Never mind that she wanted to be more than that. Olivia stood abruptly, gathering the dishes. "I will clean up." "Olivia, wait." Nathan stood as well, catching her arm. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, you said exactly what I am. A good wife. Someone to cook and clean and nurse you when you are sick. That is all you wanted, and that is all I am." She tried to pull away, but Nathan held firm. "That is not true." "Is it not? You married me because you needed someone to keep house." Just like Catherine made it clear that I am not the kind of woman a man could actually want. Catherine, Nathan's brow furrowed. What does she have to do with anything? She is beautiful and elegant and everything I am not. I saw the way you looked when you saw her. I know I am just a substitute, someone convenient because you could not have her. Nathan stared at her for a long moment, then, to her utter shock, he laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but one of genuine amusement mixed with disbelief. Olivia, I looked at Catherine and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no longing, nothing. Because seeing her again made me realize that what I felt for her was never real. It was an infatuation with someone who never really existed. The woman I thought she was would not have cared more about money than anything else. But you were hurt. You were bitter when you spoke of her. I was bitter about being used, about being found wanting because I am just a rancher, but I am not heartbroken, and I have not been thinking about her at all. He stepped closer, his hands moving to frame her face, tilting it up so she had to meet his eyes. Do you want to know what I have been thinking about? You. The way you hum while you cook, the way you light up when you are reading your books, the way you sit on the porch in the evenings and watch the sunset like it is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. The way you took care of me when I was sick, even though I have been a terrible husband to you. You have not been terrible, Olivia whispered. I have been distant and cold because I was afraid. I married you thinking it would be a practical arrangement, something safe. But from the moment I saw you step off that train, I felt something I was not expecting, and it scared me, so I kept my distance. What did you feel? Olivia's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. Want, need. A desire to protect you and make you smile and never let you feel unwanted again. His thumbs stroked her cheekbones gently. You are not a substitute, Olivia. You are not second best. You are the woman I want, more than anything, and I have been a fool for not telling you sooner. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks, but for the first time in years they were not tears of sadness. I thought I was unwanted. I have always been unwanted. I did not know how to believe that anyone could actually care for me. I care for you. I am falling in love with you, Olivia Xavier. And I want this marriage to be real if you will have me. In answer, Olivia rose on her toes and kissed him. It was tentative at first, inexperienced and shy, but Nathan made a low sound in his throat and pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. His lips were warm and firm, moving against hers with a tenderness that made her melt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. Is that a yes? Yes, Olivia said, laughing through her tears. Yes, yes, yes. That night, for the first time, Olivia did not sleep alone in her small room. Nathan carried her to his bed, their marriage bed, and made love to her with a gentleness and passion that took her breath away. He worshipped every inch of her skin, made her feel beautiful and desired and cherished in a way she had never imagined possible. Afterwards, she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I love you, she whispered. I think I have been falling in love with you since the beginning, but I was too afraid to admit it. Nathan's arms tightened around her. Never be afraid of that. I love you, Olivia. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know it. The next morning, Olivia woke wrapped in Nathan's embrace, warm and content. When she opened her eyes, she found him already awake, watching her with such tenderness that it made her heart ache. Good morning, wife, he said, his voice still rough with sleep. Good morning, husband. They kissed, slowly and sweetly, and Olivia felt like she was floating. This was what marriage should be. This warmth, this intimacy, this sense of belonging. Eventually they rose and dressed, and Olivia made breakfast while Nathan did the morning chores. But now everything felt different. Nathan stole kisses when he thought she was not looking, wrapped his arms around her waist while she worked at the stove, made her laugh with silly jokes. It was like a dam had broken, and all the emotion he had been holding back came flooding out. Tom and Charlie noticed the change immediately. When they came in for lunch later that week, Charlie took one look at the way Nathan was looking at Olivia and grinned. "Well, it is about time," he said. "Tom and I were starting to worry you two were going to dance around each other forever." "You knew?" Olivia asked, surprised. "Anyone with eyes could see Nathan was smitten from the start," Tom said. "He was just too stubborn to admit it." Nathan threw a biscuit at him, but he was smiling. "Maybe you two should worry less about my marriage and more about your own work." "Somebody has to do the work around here since you are too busy mooning over your wife," Charlie shot back good-naturedly. They all laughed, and Olivia realized with a start that this felt like family. Not the lonely, cold existence she had always known, but real warmth and companionship and belonging. The weeks passed in a happy blur. Nathan taught Olivia to ride, and they spent evenings exploring the ranch together, watching the cattle graze, admiring the mountains in the distance. He showed her all his favorite places, shared his dreams for expanding the herd, building a future. One evening in late October, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Nathan took her hand. "I have been thinking," he said, "about the future, about children." Olivia's breath caught. They had not spoken of it directly, though of course she knew it was a possibility. "What about them?" "I want them. With you. A whole house full of them if we are blessed, but only if you want that too." Olivia thought about it, trying to imagine the house filled with laughter and noise, with children who would be loved and wanted and cherished. She thought about the little girl she had been, so alone and unwanted, and felt a fierce determination that no child of hers would ever feel that way. "I want that too," she said. "Very much." Nathan pulled her into his lap, kissing her deeply. "You are going to be an amazing mother, and you will be an amazing father." Winter came early to Wyoming that year. By November, the first serious snow had fallen, blanketing the ranch in white. Olivia had never experienced a real winter before, and she was awed by the beauty of it, even as she learned to respect the harsh cold. Nathan and the ranch hands worked tirelessly to keep the cattle fed and safe from the worst of the weather. There were days when Nathan came in so cold he could barely move, and Olivia would have hot soup ready, would help him out of his frozen clothes and wrap him in blankets by the fire. On those long winter nights, with the wind howling outside and the fire crackling, they would sit together and talk about everything and nothing. Nathan told her his dreams and she shared hers. They made plans for the spring, for improvements to the ranch, for the life they were building together. And slowly, carefully, Olivia allowed herself to believe that she was truly wanted, that she had found her place in the world. On Christmas Eve, Nathan surprised her with a gift. It was a beautiful handmade rocking chair, crafted from smooth wood and perfectly balanced. "For when we have those children," he explained, looking almost shy. "I thought you might like to rock them by the fire." Olivia could not speak past the lump in her throat. She threw her arms around him, holding tight. "It is perfect, thank you. There is more." Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a delicate gold locket on a chain. "I know I should have given you a ring when we married, but I did not think, I thought it was just practical then. But it is not practical anymore. This is not a ring, but I wanted you to have something that showed you are precious to me." He opened the locket, and inside was a tiny photograph of the two of them, taken by a traveling photographer who had come through town the previous month. They were standing together in front of the ranch house, and even in the small photograph, it was clear from their expressions that they were in love. "Nathan," Olivia breathed. "It is beautiful." He fastened it around her neck, his fingers gentle on her skin. Not as beautiful as you. They made love that night in front of the fire, slow and tender, and Olivia felt complete in a way she never had before. She was loved. She was wanted. She belonged. The spring of 1877 brought new life to the ranch. The snow melted, revealing green grass beneath, and the cattle grew fat on the fresh grazing. But the most exciting new life was the one growing inside Olivia. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited until she was certain before telling Nathan. She chose a quiet evening when they were sitting on the porch together, watching the sunset. "Nathan, I have something to tell you." He looked at her, immediately alert to the seriousness in her voice. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. Everything is right." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Nathan just stared at her, processing. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen, and he let out a whoop of joy that probably could be heard all the way in town. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "We are having a baby. Olivia, we are having a baby. Careful," she said, laughing too. "You are going to make me dizzy." He set her down but kept his hands on her waist, looking at her with such love and wonder that it made her heart overflow. "This is the best news, the absolute best. Are you happy? So happy." "I was afraid at first because I do not know how to be a mother, but then I thought about how we will love this baby so much, and that has to count for something." "It counts for everything," Nathan said fiercely. "Our child is going to be so loved, Olivia, so wanted, just like you are." The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and Nathan hovered anxiously, trying to find anything that would help. He brought her ginger tea, crackers, anything the doctor suggested. He held her hair back when she was sick and rubbed her back until she fell asleep. As her belly grew, Nathan became even more protective. He would not let her lift anything heavy, insisted she rest every afternoon, and threatened to tie her to the bed if she tried to overdo it. Olivia found it both exasperating and endearing. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she protested one day when he tried to carry her to the porch. "You are carrying the most precious thing in the world," Nathan countered. "Our child. I am not taking any chances." In August, as the summer heat reached its peak, Olivia went into labor. It was long and difficult, and Nathan paced outside the bedroom door while Mrs. Miller and another woman from town attended her. He could hear her cries of pain, and it took everything in him not to burst through the door. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he heard a different sound. The thin, lusty wail of a newborn baby. Mrs. Miller opened the door, her face tired but smiling. "You have a son, Nathan. A healthy boy." Nathan rushed into the room. Olivia lay exhausted on the bed, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, but she was smiling. And in her arms, wrapped in a soft blanket, was the tiniest, most perfect baby Nathan had ever seen. "Meet your son," Olivia said softly. Nathan approached carefully, as if afraid he might break something. He looked down at the tiny face, the little fists waving in the air, the miniature features that were somehow a perfect blend of both of them. Something in his chest cracked wide open. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered. "Absolutely perfect. You want to hold him." Carefully, so carefully, Nathan took his son into his arms. The baby was warm and solid, real in a way that made Nathan's eyes sting with tears. This was his child, his and Olivia's, a little person they had created together out of love. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I am your father. And I promise you, I am going to love you and protect you every day of your life." They named him James Nathan Xavier, after Nathan's father, Jamie for short. And from the moment he entered the world, he became the center of their universe. The first few months were exhausting. Jamie woke every few hours to eat, and Olivia was tired all the time. But Nathan was right there with her, changing diapers, walking the floor with a fussy baby, doing whatever he could to help. On the rare occasions when Jamie slept for more than a few hours, Nathan would insist that Olivia rest too, and he would sit in that rocking chair he had made, holding his son and marveling at the miracle of him. Tom and Charlie were smitten with the baby as well. They would find excuses to come to the house, just to catch a glimpse of him. Charlie carved him a little wooden horse and Tom made a set of building blocks. It was clear that Jamie was going to grow up surrounded by love. As Jamie grew, so did the ranch. With Nathan's hard work and careful management, the herd increased, and they were able to hire additional help. The Double X Ranch became known as one of the most successful operations in the territory. But success did not change Nathan. He was still the same hardworking, loving husband and father. Every evening, no matter how busy he had been, he made time for his family. He would sit with Olivia on the porch while she nursed Jamie, telling her about his day, asking about hers. He never took for granted the life they had built together. When Jamie was a year old, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1879 they welcomed a daughter, Emily Rose. She had Olivia's gray eyes and Nathan's dark hair, and she was just as loved as her brother. The house that had once felt empty was now filled with laughter and noise. Jamie toddled after his father, wanting to help with everything, while Emily was content to be cuddled by anyone who would hold her. Mealtimes were chaotic, bedtimes were adventures, and every day brought something new. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Nathan and Olivia sat on the porch after the children were asleep, watching the stars come out. "Do you remember when we first met?" Nathan asked, his arm around her shoulders. "How could I forget? You barely looked at me. I thought you regretted sending for me before you even knew me. I was terrified. You stepped off that train and I felt like I had been kicked in the chest. You were so beautiful, so vulnerable, and I knew right then that I was in danger of falling for you, so I tried to keep my distance." Olivia laughed. "That worked well." "It did not work at all. I was lost from the beginning. I just did not want to admit it." She turned to look at him, her hand cupping his cheek. "I love you so much. You gave me everything I never thought I could have. A home, a family, a place where I belong." "You gave me the same things," Nathan said seriously. "I was alone, shutting myself off from feeling anything because I was afraid of being hurt again. And then you came along and showed me what real love is." They kissed, sweet and slow, the kind of kiss that spoke of years of love and trust and commitment. "You ever think about Catherine?" Olivia asked, surprising herself. She had not thought about the other woman in years. Nathan actually laughed. "No. I heard she married some railroad baron and moved east. I wish her well, but she is not even a memory anymore. You are my wife, my love, my everything." "Good answer." 2 years later, they welcomed another son, Thomas Charles, named for Tom and Charlie, who had become like uncles to the children. And 2 years after that, another daughter, Sarah Marie. The house Nathan had built was bursting at the seams, and they talked about adding on, creating more space for their growing family. Olivia had never been happier. The girl who had grown up feeling unwanted now spent her days surrounded by love. Her children were affectionate and secure, never doubting for a moment that they were cherished. Nathan was an attentive, loving father who made time for each child, who taught them and played with them and made them feel valued. And at night, when the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Nathan and Olivia would find time for each other. Their love had only deepened over the years, becoming richer and more complex. They knew each other completely now, all the strengths and weaknesses, all the dreams and fears, and they loved each other anyway. In 1885, when Jamie was 7, Emily was 6, Thomas was 4, and Sarah was 2, the family took a trip to St. Louis. Olivia had wanted to show Nathan where she had grown up, to let him see that part of her history. Standing in front of the building that had once housed the orphanage, now converted into apartments, Olivia felt a strange sense of closure. That frightened, lonely girl she had been felt like a different person. She had been transformed by love, by family, by the knowledge that she was wanted. "I used to stand at that window," she told Nathan, pointing to the 3rd floor, "and watch families walk by. I would imagine what it would be like to belong to someone." Nathan pulled her close. "You belong to us now. To me and Jamie and Emily and Thomas and Sarah. You are the heart of our family, Olivia. I know." And she did. She finally, truly believed it. The years continued to pass in a blur of happiness. The children grew, each one developing their own personality. Jamie was serious and responsible, already showing signs that he would one day take over the ranch. Emily was creative and imaginative, always making up stories and drawing pictures. Thomas was the wild one, fearless and adventurous, keeping everyone on their toes. And Sarah was the baby, sweet and cuddly, with a smile that could melt anyone's heart. Nathan and Olivia grew older together, their hair showing threads of silver, their faces lined with laugh lines. But their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Olivia with a trip to Denver. They left the children with Tom and Charlie, who had both settled on the ranch permanently and were considered part of the family, and spent a week in the city. It was strange to be away from the children, to have time just for themselves. But it was also wonderful. They went to the theater, ate in fancy restaurants, stayed in a nice hotel with a real bathtub. They held hands like young lovers, talked for hours, made love without worrying about being interrupted. "This has been perfect," Olivia said on their last evening as they walked through the city streets. "But I am ready to go home." "Me too," Nathan agreed. "I miss our noisy, chaotic, perfect life." When they returned to the ranch, they were mobbed by their children, all 4 of them talking at once about everything that had happened while they were gone. Nathan scooped up Sarah, who at 12 was getting too old for such things but allowed it anyway, while Olivia hugged Emily and Thomas. Jamie, now a young man of 19, hung back slightly but was smiling. "We missed you," he said simply. "We missed you too," Olivia said. "All of you so much." That night, after the younger children were in bed, Jamie asked to speak with his parents. They sat at the kitchen table and Jamie looked nervous. "There is a girl," he said. "Her name is Anna. Her family just moved here from Colorado. She is wonderful and I want to court her." "With your permission." Nathan and Olivia exchanged a glance. Their oldest child, already thinking about courtship and marriage. It seemed impossible that so much time had passed. "Tell us about her," Olivia said gently. Jamie's face lit up as he described Anna. She was smart, kind, loved horses and books. Her father was a blacksmith setting up shop in Fort Bridger. As he talked, Olivia saw the same look in her son's eyes that she had seen in Nathan's all those years ago. "Love, you have our permission," Nathan said, "and our blessing. If she is even half as special as you say, we will be lucky to have her in our family." Jamie's relief was palpable. "Thank you, both of you." After he left, Olivia leaned against Nathan. "He is growing up so fast. They all are. Before we know it, this house will be empty again." "Not for a long while yet. And even when they do leave, we will have grandchildren to spoil." Nathan laughed. "I am not ready to be a grandfather. Too bad. You do not get a choice in the matter." They sat there in comfortable silence, thinking about the years that had passed, the years still to come. They had built something beautiful together, a family born from two lonely people who had taken a chance on each other. Jamie did marry Anna 2 years later, and they built a house on the far side of the ranch property. Emily went east to study art, causing her parents no small amount of worry, but she returned a year later with a head full of ideas and a determination to bring culture to Wyoming. Thomas, true to form, became a deputy sheriff, channeling his recklessness into protecting others. And Sarah, the baby, was still at home at 16, helping her mother and learning to run a household. On a warm summer evening in 1897, the entire family gathered at the main house for dinner. It was chaos, with everyone talking at once, passing dishes, laughing at shared jokes. Jamie and Anna's 3 children, Emily's 2 and Thomas's baby son were all running around, making noise and getting underfoot. Nathan sat at the head of the table, watching his family, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. This was his legacy. Not just the ranch, though he was proud of what he had built, but these people. His children and grandchildren, all of them loved and secure and happy. His eyes found Olivia at the other end of the table, and she smiled at him. After 21 years of marriage, she could still make his heart skip a beat. She was older now, her hair more silver than brown, her face lined, but to him she was as beautiful as the day she stepped off that train. After dinner, when the younger children were playing outside and the adults were lingering over coffee, Jamie raised his glass. "I would like to make a toast," he said, "to my parents who showed all of us what real love looks like. You taught us that family is not just about blood, but about choosing to love and support each other every day. You built something amazing here, not just a ranch, but a home. Thank you for everything." "Hear, hear," the others chorused, raising their glasses. Nathan felt his throat tighten with emotion. He stood, pulling Olivia up with him. "I want to say something too. 21 years ago, I sent for a mail-order bride because I needed someone to help run this ranch. What I got was so much more than that. Olivia, you gave me a reason to live, not just exist. You gave me love and family and joy. You took a lonely, bitter man and taught him how to be happy. Everything good in my life comes from you." Olivia was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. "I thought I was unwanted. I spent my whole life believing I was not good enough, that I would always be alone. And then I met you and you wanted me. You loved me. You made me believe I was worthy of love. You gave me everything I ever dreamed of and so much more." They kissed, and their children cheered. After all these years, Nathan and Olivia were still hopelessly in love, and everyone could see it. As the evening wound down and the family began to disperse, Nathan and Olivia walked out to the porch, their favorite spot. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and gold. "You remember the first time we stood here together?" Nathan asked. "The night before our wedding. I was so scared. I thought I had made a terrible mistake. And now—" Olivia turned to face him, her hands coming up to cup his face. "Now I know it was the best decision I ever made. Coming here, marrying you, building this life. I would not change a single thing. Neither would I." Nathan pulled her close, holding her tight. "I love you, Olivia Xavier. More than anything in this world. I love you too." They stood there as the sun sank below the horizon, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love that would last forever. The girl who thought she was unwanted had found a man who wanted her more than anything, and together they had created something beautiful. Their story was not one of grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was quieter than that, built on small moments of kindness and care, on choosing each other day after day, on building a life together one decision at a time. But it was no less powerful for its simplicity. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Nathan and Olivia went inside, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held together. Because that was what love was, they had learned. Not just the exciting beginning, but the steady middle, the comfortable routine, the deep knowledge that no matter what happened, they would face it together. The Double X Ranch continued to thrive for many years. Nathan and Olivia grew old together, their love never fading even as their bodies grew frail. They were blessed to see all their children married and happy, to hold great-grandchildren in their arms, to know that the legacy they were leaving was one of love. When Nathan passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Olivia holding his hand, their family gathered to mourn him. But even in their grief, they celebrated the life he had lived, the love he had shared. The ranch was passed down to Jamie, who ran it with the same care and dedication his father had shown. Olivia lived for 2 more years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She spent her days sitting on that porch, watching the land Nathan had loved so much, remembering their life together. She wrote letters to her grandchildren, telling them stories of their grandfather, making sure they knew what kind of man he had been. When she finally passed, quietly and without pain, it was as if she simply drifted off to sleep. Jamie found her in her rocking chair, the locket Nathan had given her all those years ago still around her neck, a peaceful smile on her face. They buried her next to Nathan on a hillside overlooking the ranch, under the big sky they had both loved. The entire community turned out for the funeral, testament to the impact they had made in their years together. But their story did not end there. It continued in the lives of their children and grandchildren, in the lessons of love and family they had taught, in the ranch that still bore their name. The Double X Ranch remained in the family for generations, a symbol of what 2 people could build together when they chose love over loneliness, hope over fear, togetherness over solitude. And sometimes, on quiet summer evenings, when the sun was setting in brilliant colors over the Wyoming prairie, people swore they could see 2 figures standing on the porch of the old ranch house, hand in hand, watching the sunset together, just as they always had. The girl who thought she was unwanted had found more than just love. She had found home, family, belonging, and a legacy that would outlast her lifetime. And the rancher who had thought he was too broken to love again had discovered that the heart could heal, that love could bloom even in the most unlikely places, and that sometimes the things we need most come to us when we least expect them. Their love story was not perfect. There had been struggles and challenges, moments of doubt and fear, but they had faced it all together, and that had made all the difference. They had proven that love is not just a feeling, but a choice, a commitment, a daily decision to put someone else's happiness alongside your own. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all. Not the land or the cattle or the buildings, but the love that had started with 2 lonely people taking a chance on each other and had grown into something that touched countless lives. The letters that Olivia had written to her grandchildren were treasured and passed down through the generations. In them, she told the story of how she had answered an advertisement for a mail-order bride, how she had been so afraid, how she had thought she was unwanted, and how Nathan Xavier had proven her wrong in every possible way. She wrote about the importance of choosing love, of being vulnerable enough to let someone in, of believing that you are worthy of happiness. She wrote about the power of family, of building connections that would last beyond a lifetime. And she wrote about gratitude, about being thankful for every day, every moment, every chance to love and be loved. Those letters became a touchstone for the family, a reminder of where they came from, of the love that had started it all. They were read at weddings and christenings, shared during difficult times as a source of comfort and inspiration. They kept Olivia and Nathan's memory alive, their love story continuing to touch hearts long after they were gone. The Double X Ranch stood as a monument to their life together. The house where they had raised their family, the barn where Nathan had worked so hard, the hillside where they were buried together. It all remained, cared for by generations of Xaviers who understood the value of what had been built there. And on the mantel in the main house, in a place of honor, sat the rocking chair Nathan had made for Olivia all those years ago. It had rocked 4 children, dozens of grandchildren, and countless great-grandchildren. It was worn smooth from years of use, but it was still sturdy, still beautiful, still a symbol of the love that had created it. Next to it was the locket Nathan had given Olivia on their first Christmas together. Inside was still the tiny photograph of the two of them, young and in love. Future generations would open that locket and look at those faces, seeing the beginning of their own story, because that was what Nathan and Olivia had created. Not just a ranch or a family, but a story. A story about 2 lonely people who found each other, who chose to love despite their fears, who built something beautiful together. A story about a woman who thought she was unwanted, discovering that she was loved beyond measure. A story about a man who thought his heart was closed, finding it opened in ways he never imagined. It was a simple story, really, but it was also profound, because it proved that love can bloom anywhere, that family can be built, that loneliness does not have to be forever. It showed that taking a chance, being brave enough to hope, can lead to more happiness than you ever thought possible. And so the story of Nathan and Olivia Xavier lived on, passed down through the generations, a reminder that love is always worth fighting for, that family is the greatest treasure, and that sometimes the things we think we do not deserve are exactly what we need most. Their legacy was not one of wealth or fame, but of love. Simple, enduring, transformative love. The kind of love that changes lives, that creates families, that builds futures. The kind of love that proves beyond any doubt that no one is truly unwanted. We all have a place, a person, a home waiting for us if only we are brave enough to reach for it. And in the end, that was the greatest gift Nathan and Olivia gave to those who came after them. Not just the land or the house or the material things, but the example of what love could be. What family could be. What life could be when 2 people chose each other every day for all their days. The sun set over the Double X Ranch, just as it had every evening for over a century. The land remained constant and eternal. But more importantly, the love remained, woven into every board of the house, every blade of grass, every stone on that hillside where 2 people who had loved each other more than anything rested together. She had thought she was unwanted. He had wanted her more than anything. And together they had created a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of choosing love, of building family, of creating home. Their story was complete, their ending happy, their legacy assured. And their love, like the land they had built upon, would endure forever.